Todd, you know it's going to be a good episode when someone ends up standing in a puddle of gas because of a clogged petcock. And if you don't know what a petcock is, just don't Google it at work. Our goal at Best Motorcycle Roads is to make your next motorcycle trip the best it can be. The bottom line is sometimes the best part isn't really the road, it's the breakdowns, bizarre pit stops, and all those unexpected detours that turn a simple trip into a great story.
Yeah.
So for the mile marker, we've really all had rides that didn't go the way we expected, but somehow ended up better for it, I guess. Mm-hmm. So we've got 3 stories in this kind of our top 6 stories countdown. This is part 2. One of them broke down before I'd even started. One was saved by 89 octane and a made-rite. And then one involved more gasoline than good judgment. So let's talk about number 3, the ride where the plan completely fell apart. Mm-hmm. I think you remember this one.
I do.
Or as we refer to it sometimes, the derecho, the old wing, and a 750-mile redemption day ride. So summer 2020 was a weird summer already. Mm-hmm. We had COVID, and then Iowa added some extra spice with something they call a derecho. I had no idea what a derecho was before then.
Right.
Essentially, would you call it it's a land-based hurricane? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Straight line winds that literally tore the roofs off buildings, snapped trees off 40 feet in the air, and took out the power grid around here for a few days.
Yeah, I feel like it was close to 100-mile-an-hour winds or more even.
Plus in some. So this, of course, happens right when you, Brad, and I were planning a trip down to Tail of the Dragon, and we were kind of deciding whether if we should really go or not. Mm-hmm. That's when Colleen told me that I was going to leave because after one day of not having electricity, she said, just get out of here. I think it'd be better if you left. So I guess we finished packing up the bikes and we took off.
Yeah, and I had a generator.
Yeah, you had a generator at home.
Built on my house, so it was.
You were like, whatever.
It was fine.
So I had prepared, quote unquote, an 83 Goldwing for the ride. So and it had a little bit of fuel problems, but I figured it'd sort itself out after a few miles.
Right.
Worst case scenario, I'll sell it to someone for $50 and ride back home on the back end of your bike. So it didn't take very long, about 25 or so miles in, and we realized that the old wing was fading.
Yeah.
And it didn't really die fast; it was dying slowly. It couldn't get enough fuel when we got on the interstates.
Yeah.
So we had to turn around, and we limped it back home. Got back, and because of all the derecho, damage, mm-hmm. Brad couldn't go anyway. So he's like, "Why don't you just take my bike?" So that's what we did. We took the luggage, we moved that over to Brad's much newer and better running wing, and we restarted the day only 5 hours behind schedule, Todd.
Right.
It was about noon, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the day was half gone, and we were just getting started. So we had to make up a little time. So we pushed it. By the end of the day, we had clocked about 750 miles, I think, by the time we added in the turnaround detour, and ended up staying in Danville, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. But that's when it really started to feel great again. I mean, we went to Collinsville, Virginia, North Carolina. A buddy of mine was converting an old tobacco barn into a tiny house because, of course, he was. Like Mike does Mike things. Mike, if you're listening, you're weird, but I love you. So, yeah, we really hit every major road around the tail. The Chirahata Skyway, Moonshiner 28, Little Switzerland was wild.
That was great. Yeah.
Foothills Parkway. We rode it all. So, but we didn't ride the Devil's Triangle.
Unfortunately,
it was just out of the way. It's a weird. We have to plan for that. Just it's in a weird spot for us to get out of the way. So after all the craziness, after a broken bike knocked us down, it was still we had a great time. I mean, everything was amazing. The people, and then I don't know, I don't even know if we'd talk about this ride ever if it wasn't for that stupid motorcycle that just crapped out. And for anyone that wants to know, the motorcycle is about 1,250 feet away from us right now. I sold it to my brother-in-law. It's next door. I'm not sure he ever fixed it.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering whatever happened.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm afraid to ask. So that's our first story. The second one is one about my snobby gas tastes, I guess. We were gonna loop Iowa, kind of the middle of Iowa loop, I guess you might say. And so you make a great plan. We had great weather. What you don't always plan for is when you can get fuel. And we found fuel in a really interesting little place, but it was really going to be kind of a super casual loop around Iowa. We had some ideas. We started out taking Highway 6, which is kind of like the old Interstate 80, west out of where we're at near Iowa City. So we cruised that over kind of to Des Moines, and you kind of got to get on the interstates when you get around those bigger cities because you don't want to be riding right through the middle of town. Because I wanted to start out on this thing they call the White Pole Road. And if you look it up, it's really cool. They've got some pictures of it, but that's west of Des Moines on Highway 6. And it's really a nostalgic ride as it can be today. But basically what they did, the headlights were so bad back in when these roads were starting to be constructed that you couldn't see the road. So what they did here, and it was one of the first places, they painted the poles, and I don't know if they were telephone poles or electric poles at the time. They painted them white so that the car's feeble headlights could actually see them. So this small stretch actually still has the poles painted white.
Cool.
Now, granted, it's a normal sized road, but it's really cool as you drive through it because it just kind of reminds you of the way things used to be.
Yeah, right.
And then we went to some place called Marnie, Iowa, which has not much going on except this really cool British motorcycle shop called Baxter's Cycle. And if you ever get a chance to get there, you should. It's like a Triumph. They have the
Royal
Enfields. Yeah, they got the Royal Enfields, and they always have 20 or 30 old bikes for sale there. And it's just a cool place to stop, check it out, walk around. Just a neat place. Kind of lost, in the middle of Iowa there.
Hey, what were you riding at the time? I don't remember.
I would have been riding a Kawasaki Contour, so a sport touring bike. And as we got close to kind of Omaha area, we took off and kind of started going north there. And we had lunch at a place called in a town called BB Town, at a place called the Twisted Tail Steakhouse. Great little place, just a nice little place to stop. But the funny thing that happened here is as we were leaving, the Contour has a pretty good sized rear tire. It's like it's probably a 180. It's good sized. And it had rained at some point because the potholes in the road were full of water. And it wasn't like a huge pothole or anything, but I rode over this one pothole, and my tire must have just been exactly the right size to fill that pothole.
Oh, man.
Because Turk's riding, not like on my tail, but just behind me. I roll over this thing, and it looked like the Disney... those water cannons that shoot from like one pond to another at Disney. The thing shot out of there. It shot it like a pool of water and hit him right in the face shield.
Oh, you're kidding.
You couldn't have planned it more. If I could have bent physics myself, I couldn't have planned it better. And the problem was, then he starts yelling at me, of course, like, why'd you do that? I'm like thinking, why did I do what?
Right.
He shot this thing, and it was like, it just landed. It couldn't have landed more on his face shield. And I'm laughing so hard. I'm not kidding you. I almost wrecked. I was laughing. My eyes were closed. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought I was gonna wreck because I couldn't control the motorcycle. But, oh gosh. So anyway, later that day is actually where the story takes us. We're getting up into some of these areas of Iowa, and this area is getting fairly low population. I mean, it's a lot of cows, a lot of farms, and that's about it. So we rolled in, and we were getting low on fuel, and Mike was getting very concerned. His fuel light had been on for a while. So we roll up in this town called Smithtown, and I admit it. Okay, it's fine. I'm a snob when it comes to the fuel. I want to get 91 octane or better. I realize that it doesn't really matter that much. Blah, 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 blah. But every single pump at this station was 89 octane. Oh. So I'm fussy, because that's what I do. But so we got fueled up, and it was fine, and it's no big deal. But so the gas station we go in, and I mean, this is like half gas station, half like somebody's house.
That's small town Iowa
It's small
right there.
town.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and I grab a pop, as I probably generally do, and I'm looking over, and there is like a crock pot sitting on a folding table, just kind of in the corner. And it's like, what's going on here? And so pretty soon somebody walks in, they grab a paper plate, and they make a made-rite. There's made-rites in the crock pot.
Oh.
I'm like, what's going on? Oh, well, that's the lunch special.
Oh.
It's like not made up, it's like,
Yeah. Just go help yourself.
yeah, you help yourself. Why not? I mean, you already knew everybody that made it anyway. And it was just one of those things that was like, this is just cool. I mean, it's small town. So we're kind of...
For those who don't know, you better explain what a made-rite is. If someone's listening
yeah,
doesn't know what a made-rite is.
Iowa is famous for this loose meat sandwich.
Yeah.
It's basically hamburger that has your own concoction of things.
Spices and things.
Spices, onions, things, and you never know. And they usually have a cream of mushroom soup or something, but you can't really tell, so it binds it together a little bit. It depends.
Little bit.
Straight
yeah.
up,
Yeah.
that's actually technically called a church burger, I think.
Yeah.
But the made-rite is just loose meat in a bun, sometimes with cheese, but I'm not sure if you're supposed to have cheese. So yeah, so it's like a loose meat sandwich, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Sloppy Joe, but not
without the tomato sauce.
Yeah. But then we're kind of, we always end up outside getting on the bikes. You take your time. Everyone's kind of resting a little bit as everyone starts to also then stopping in for getting some beer. But they're all dressed like they're in the 1940s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like Sears and Roebuck catalog came to life. So Brad's like, okay, I got to ask, what are you guys doing or what's going on? And it turns out there was a wedding in town. And that's just what the theme was. So it's just wild, man.
Oh, wow.
So everyone was going to the golf course to the wedding, and it was like everybody in town, which was probably 45, 50 people.
That's cool.
So it was just wild. So you got me getting all pissy about the gas, but then you have Crockpot sandwiches, and then everyone's wearing suits, suspenders, and kind of made up. So it was kind of cool. I mean, you just got to see something that you probably wouldn't have seen. And so, we circled back. The weather was great. We had a great ride. We never got lost. We didn't break down. We didn't run out of gas, which was good.
Yeah.
And then, the worst thing was I had to settle for 89 octane. But it's just like one of those things that you won't forget. I mean, you can plan your route. You can plan your fuel stops. You can plan a lot of things. But running into these little unexpected neat is just kind of one of the things that comes out of these.
It made it memorable, and you're still talking about it today.
For sure.
Yeah, that's so neat. I would have to say my number one memory on a trip is where the ride where the unexpected stole the show, really, is what I'm going to call it. So this one has everything, Tom. This is breakdowns, gas-soaked hands, unexpected kindness, and a one-legged biker that MacGyvered a fix with his dad on a speakerphone. So this kind of story becomes legendary amongst us. So.
Yeah.
The unexpected may have stolen the show, but we like to refer to this episode as the one where Chris lost his pet cock. So everyone has a plan, right? And then there's what actually happens. So we had a great trip planned, lots of open roads, to be the highlight of this one. And it turns out the moment we'd never forget started with a gas tank and a slow sputtering death on the overpass.
You guys were literally like over.
Oh, yeah. We were leaving out of the Chicago area, Naperville area, and you guys had left out of Iowa. Yep. I went over there.
I think we left the day before.
You may have left the day before. I was waiting. Chris had a football game, I think, the night before, so we left the next morning. It was a Saturday morning, and we had just filled up with fuel, and we were going to have to get on the interstate to kind of get caught up with you guys. So we had to cross over the interstate, so we had filled up, start heading up over the top of the interstate, and he's in front of me, and he's just slowing down. Down.
Come on.
I'm like, go ahead. And pretty soon he just kind of pulled over to the side of the road, and luckily we had just barely gotten to the top, and I was like, what's going on? He goes, it just kept losing power, and now it's dead, and he could not start it. It's like, oh crap! What are we gonna do now?
Right.
So, turn it around and start pushing it back down like a sad parade float, So we're coasting down the hill, and we back. Luckily, there was a gas station off to the side, and we kind of pulled in, but the gas station was closed. So we're in the parking lot of this gas station, and we're just going through everything. Now, my first thought was, this has happened to me before, where the gas cap on top, we had just filled up. He put it down too tight or something, and it wasn't letting the air go in. So it was trying to pull fuel out, no air going in, and pretty soon it can't do anything. So I said, open that, open the gas cap, and you're going to hear it go. Well, he opened it up and it didn't do that. So we're like, uh-oh, well, it's not that.
That's all the list I had.
That was my big idea. So so we're kind of standing there going around looking at the bike, and pretty soon this guy drives up in an old beat up rusty pickup truck, and he's got a cigarette in one hand. He kind of leans out the window, and he's like, "What's going on?" And we said, "The bike just died. We just filled up with gas." And he nods like, "Yep, seen that 1,000 times." So he pulls in, and he's telling us through the window of the truck. He said, "My dad owned a motorcycle shop for his whole life," and so we can see he's got like crutches in the back. So he gets out of the truck and starts coming towards us, and he's only got one leg.
Oh my gosh!
So he's crutching over. He's got his dad on the cell phone, and I think he just stuck his phone in like his shirt pocket. And he starts talking to his dad.
I call that farmer speakerphone.
Farmer speakerphone works. And he's, asking his dad, "What should we look at? What's going on?" And Dad's like talking us through everything to look at, and finally said, "We need to like pull the fuel line and see if there's fuel coming through." Well, that's what it was. There was getting no fuel.
No fuel. And
Chris was driving like a 1998 Road King. Mm-hmm. So there's a petcock at the bottom of the fuel tank. It's open. We're like, okay, pull the fuel line off. There's no fuel coming through. Out. So this guy's name was Rich. Rich says, "Go over to the back of my pickup truck and grab a crescent wrench. There's tools back there." So we walk over to his pickup truck, and you've never seen such a pile of rust. I'm like, those don't even look like tools. They're so rusty. But sure enough, we kind of like sifted through and found the crustiest, just full of rust, crescent wrench, and brought it over. And his dad said, "Go ahead and take that off." So, mind you, we just filled up with gas. So he's cranking off this petcock, and pretty soon fuel's pouring out of it. So, I've got my finger on it like a sinking ship.
The Dutch boy.
Down. Sure enough, and so he's on the phone with his dad, and he's like, tells him what model, and what the part number is, and so Dad's gonna go and get us one. It's a Saturday morning. He knows of a Harley dealership or a motorcycle shop that's open. So, he takes off, and we're standing there. And so we start talking with him. Meanwhile, we're marinating in 87 octane. So Rich starts telling us about the story about his leg. And he was down in Florida riding his motorcycle, and he was T-boned by a car at an intersection and ended up losing his leg. And he said, "But I still ride motorcycles." And we're like, "What? How do you ride motorcycles with one leg?" Well, his dad helped him modify his motorcycle, put all the controls onto the left-hand side. And so he can drive this motorcycle. When he gets to an intersection, it comes to a stop, he just has to make sure he's leaning to the left.
Right.
Because he's got nothing to stop him from going to the right. So anyway, I'm just amazed that anybody could do that or would have the guts to even try it. So his dad calls. His dad had gone all the way to Joliet from where we were. We're like at Naperville. He'd gone to Joliet. They didn't have the petcock we needed. So not. Dad says, "I still have bikes at home. I'll bet my bike has one of these." So goes back to his house, takes a petcock off of his own bike.
A working motorcycle,
and brings it over to us in the in the parking lot. We screw that thing back in. Fuel's coming through it. Well, there wasn't much fuel at that point because I'd been standing there for a long time. Fuel was all over the parking lot. Meanwhile, I need to tell you, Rich never stopped smoking his cigarettes. There was fuel it wasn't pooled up because it was concrete, but it was all the way around us, for 10 feet in all directions. And he stood there smoking cigarettes, talking to us the whole time. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. So, got it all put back together. The bike started. It ran fine. We're like, "What do we owe you?" And he's like, he just waves. He goes, "That's what riders do." We're like, come on, you at least have to replace the petcock on your motorcycle. Right. So he let us give him a few bucks, but he just wouldn't take anything.
Oh my
and it was like, man, I mean, the kindness.
Yes.
Just to pull over, to help us to call his dad, make his dad drive all over the country to find us. You know, it was just, you know, it's one of those rides that it could have been horrible.
It would have been over.
It would have been over. We would have missed it. But, you know, because of Rich, because of his dad, sometimes the best things just happen on a trip.
Well,
you know, because who shows up?
And that's why we do stop a lot. To see. I mean, I remember stopping when Turk and I were riding out to Seattle. There was an older gentleman, old guy on a bike, and he was stopped, you know, so we pulled over like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm just getting some more clothes on. It was getting a little cold," you know. But like, you just got to stop for people. I mean, you want that. Because you want them to stop for you, you know.
Exactly.
And I think that's the beautiful thing. I don't know if it's because Harleys break down so much, but Harley riders do stop for people.
They do. They absolutely do.
You know, it's one of the rules, and I love it. You know, that's an awesome story.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah. Never forget a one-legged motorcycle rider that, you know, smokes cigarettes while you're covered in gas, and he helps you out. What a guy.
This is a section we call the Toolkit. We share motorcycle gear review, and other riding tips. Well, I guess that brings us to the Toolkit, Todd. You had a couple thoughts here of just helpful things?
Well, first of all, because of, you know, what's happened to us in several different times, be flexible with your plans, right? You almost have to build in some extra time in case the unexpected happens. So, you know, sometimes it's the detours and those wrong turns. They become the highlight, you know. And keep a sense of humor. When things fall apart, laughter, a smile, a good attitude, that's really the best tools you have, you know.
For sure. I also thought we've been talking about this a lot, but I mean, this case it'd been nice to have an actual toolkit that you could have used. You know, a flashlight too, because it gets nighttime, especially if you're trying to work on stuff. You try dinking around with a phone flashlight, it just doesn't work that well.
Yeah, and I like the headset style
that have a little movement.
Yeah.
And then lastly, there's actually, you know, you can carry some fuel bottles, and they actually make fuel bags too, that fold flat. So like you could either go get fuel with it, or have, like in the bottle you can carry like, it's like maybe a liter of fuel, and there's some people that mount them, you know, and when you're in certain places, it is nice to have just a little bit more fuel.
Just in case, that's right.
Yeah, so we'll put some links to that. If you liked the podcast today, please like and subscribe. Sign up for our BMR Rider Alerts. It's our way of keeping you in the loop. If you're listening to this podcast as a podcast, we also video and put it on YouTube, and we'd love you to check out what we've got going there. And we promise, no spam.
No spam. Keep the spirit of adventure alive, and remember, bikes, friends, and endless roads, the stories ride forever. Take care.